My sister had an affair with my fiancé. My family called it a misunderstanding, so I made sure they understood exactly what they'd lost. I'm Connor, 32, and for years I thought loyalty in my family was a two-way street. Turns out I was the only one driving on it. My younger sister Paige and I grew up 3 years apart, in a split-level house outside Cleveland, the kind of place where the lawn mattered more than what was happening inside it. My dad, Walter, sold industrial equipment and treated every conversation like a negotiation he needed to win. My mom, Diane, ran the house like a campaign manager running damage control, always more concerned with how things looked than how they actually were. And Paige was the candidate everyone wanted to elect. I don't say that bitterly, just factually. Paige was funny in that effortless way some people are born with, the kind of funny that gets forgiven for things the rest of us would get grounded for. When she totaled Dad's truck at 17, he bought her a car within the month, something about make mistakes. When I got a speeding ticket, at the same age, I lost my license privileges for a year, and got a lecture about responsibility I can still recite from memory. I made honor roll every semester of high school and got a handshake. Paige squeaked through with a 2.6 GPA and got a graduation trip to Cancun. I'm not telling you this to complain about my childhood. I'm telling you because it matters later. Because it's the soil everything else grew out of. I went into commercial real estate after college, the kind of career that rewards exactly the traits my parents never noticed in me. Discipline, follow through, showing up early and staying late. By 28, I was closing 7-figure deals in downtown Cleveland and had finally stopped needing anyone's approval. Or so I told myself. Then I met Sienna. She came into my life through a mutual friend's barbecue, the kind of meeting that feels random until you look back and realize it was the most important 5 minutes of your life. She worked in pediatric nursing, had this laugh that made strangers turn their heads, and she paid attention to me in a way I wasn't used to. Not performative interest, actual interest. She asked follow-up questions. She remembered things I'd mentioned weeks earlier. I fell for her slowly and then all at once, the way you're supposed. We were together 2 years before I proposed, on the pier in Edgewater Park at sunset. Nothing elaborate. Just the two of us and a ring I'd been saving for since the year before. A 1.2 carat oval cut, white gold band just under $5,000 after the setting. She cried. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. We started planning a fall wedding, the kind with string lights, and a band instead of a DJ, the kind she'd been sketching out in a notebook since she was a teenager. Paige met Sienna early on, at a 4th of July cookout at my parents' place. I remember Mom commenting afterward about how alive Paige seemed that day. How she'd actually stayed past 9 instead of making an excuse to leave like she usually did at family things. At the time I thought it was sweet, that maybe my sister and my fiancé were becoming friends. Looking back, I think that was the day Paige decided she wanted something that was mine. Over the following year, Paige started showing up more. She'd swing by our condo to borrow things she clearly didn't need. She started texting Sienna directly instead of going through me, which I told myself was normal sister-in-law bonding. She'd compliment Sienna's outfits a little too long, laugh a little too hard at things that weren't that funny. I noticed it the way you notice a draft in a house. Present. Mildly annoying, easy to ignore if you don't think too hard about where it's coming from. I should have thought harder. It was a Tuesday in April when everything came apart. I'd had an unusually light afternoon, no showings booked, so I decided to surprise Sienna at her apartment. We hadn't officially moved in together yet. She wanted to keep her own place until the wedding. Something about not wanting to rush that step even though we were already engaged. I picked up Lebanese food from the place on Lorraine she loved. The one with the garlic sauce she'd put on literally anything. I let myself in with my key around 5:40. Her shoes were by the door. Her purse was on the kitchen counter. The apartment was quiet except for low voices coming from the bedroom. The kind of quiet two people create when they're trying not to make noise. I want to tell you I had some dramatic realization in that moment. Some gut punch of intuition. Mostly I just felt confused. I called out her name. Nothing. I set the food down and walked toward the bedroom, already constructing some innocent explanation in my head. Maybe she had the TV on, maybe a friend was over, maybe. I opened the door and found my sister and my fiancé in bed together. There's a specific kind of silence that happens in a moment like that. Not silence like nobody's talking. Silence like the air itself stops moving. Paige sat straight up, pulling the sheet with her. Her face doing this rapid calculation I could actually watch happening in real time. Sienna just stared at me, mouth open, no sound coming out. It's not what it looks like, Paige said, which might be the single most useless sentence in the English language because it is always, every single time, exactly what it looks like. I didn't yell. I want you to understand that, because everyone assumes I must have lost it, screamed, thrown something. I didn't. I just said, "Get out of my fiancé's apartment," in a voice that didn't even sound like mine, flat and far away, like I was listening to myself from another room. Paige tried to talk. Something about how it wasn't planned, how feelings had built up over time, how she never meant for it to go this far. I didn't hear most of it. I was too busy doing math in my head. How long? How many times? Whether the 4th of July cookout was the beginning or just the first time I'd noticed. Sienna grabbed for my arm as I turned to leave. Connor, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I watched it. Pack your things. You have until tomorrow night. Where am I supposed to go? I hear my sister has a guest room, I said, and walked out before either of them could respond. I drove to my buddy Marcus's place. Not the Marcus from the name list, a different one, doesn't matter. And sat on his couch until 2 in the morning, not talking, just replaying it. The numbness lasted about a day. Then it turned into something heavier, something that sat in my chest like wet concrete. My parents found out within 48 hours. Presumably from Paige getting ahead of the story before I could tell it my way. Mom called first, and to her credit, her initial reaction was fury. Real, audible fury. I can't believe she would do this to you, she kept saying. She's not welcome in this house. Not after this. It felt good to hear, for about 11 days. Then Dad called and said the words that told me exactly how this was going to go. Look, your sister made a serious error in judgment, but she's still your sister. We need to find a way through this as a family. An error in judgment. Like she'd missed a deadline at work. There's no through this, Dad. There's just consequences. Don't be so rigid about it, Connor. People are flawed. You're acting like she committed a crime. She didn't commit a crime. She committed a betrayal. There's a difference and it's worse. He sighed that particular sigh he does, the one that means the conversation is over whether I agree or not. Your mother wants everyone together to talk this out. As a family. I'm not interested. I started pulling away from everyone after that. I let calls go to voicemail. I threw myself into work. The way you throw yourself into anything when you're trying not to feel something. 60-hour weeks. Every closing I could get my hands on. Staying at the office until the cleaning crew kicked me out. My manager, a guy named Gavin. No wait, not that name either. Let's say my manager Holt. Noticed I was burning the candle at both ends and asked if everything was alright. I told him I was dealing with some personal stuff. He didn't push, just mentioned, almost in passing, that the firm's Austin office was struggling to find someone to head up their commercial division. And that my numbers made me an obvious fit if I ever wanted a change of scenery. I didn't need a second invitation. Within 6 weeks I had an offer letter, a relocation package, and a one-way plane ticket out of Ohio. I told my parents I was moving for the promotion. I did not tell them I'd accepted partly because Austin was over 1,000 miles from everyone, whose name I'd just spent a month trying not to say out loud. Mom cried on the phone when I told her, what about holidays? What about being close to family? I'm not running from family, Mom. I'm running from Paige. She's not the only one in this family, Connor. No, but she's the reason I need distance from all of you. You all decided this was something to get over instead of something that ended a relationship and broke trust permanently. I moved that July. New apartment, new furniture. I donated almost everything, from my old place, because I couldn't look at a single item, without thinking about who'd been in my life when I bought it. New city where nobody knew the story, where I could just be a guy who closed deals and went to the gym, and didn't have to explain why his Sundays were quiet now. It lasted 4 months before the first crack appeared. Mom called in late October, using the voice she reserves for things she already knows I won't. Like, Connor honey, I need to tell you something about Paige. I don't want updates on Paige. She and Sienna are getting married in the spring. I sat with that for a long moment. Married. My sister was marrying the woman I'd bought a $5,000 ring for. They want to reach out to you before the wedding, Mom continued. They don't want this hanging over everything. They want to make it right. My answer is no. Connor, please. She's your sister. Sisters don't sleep with their brother's fiancée and then ask for a blessing on the wedding. Whatever Paige is, she's not that anymore. People make mistakes. Stop calling it a mistake, Mom. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a decision, repeated, over months, in my own apartment, with my own fiancé, while I was at work, trying to build a life for both of us. Don't shrink it down to fit something forgivable. She cried. She always cried at this point in the conversation. The kind of crying that's less about grief and more about pressure, a tool she'd been using on me since I was a teenager and it had simply stopped working. You're going to tear this family apart over this. The family already tore itself apart. I'm just the only one who noticed. I hung up. That was the opening shot of a campaign that ran for nearly a year. Over the following weeks, I heard from Dad. From an aunt I hadn't spoken to since a cousin's confirmation. Even a voicemail from Paige's future mother-in-law, a woman I'd met exactly once. The message was uniform. Forgive her, attend the wedding, stop being difficult. Dad tried the practical angle. Holding on to this doesn't punish her, son, it just punishes you. Like resentment was some kind of self-inflicted wound instead of a completely reasonable response to having my life detonated by 2 people I trusted. I didn't go to the wedding in March. I spent that Saturday at the climbing gym, and then got dinner alone at a barbecue place near my apartment, and it was, without exaggeration, one of the more peaceful days I'd had in a year. My phone, unblocked for work reasons, lit up around 6 with messages from relatives, demanding to know where I was, how I could miss this, how humiliated everyone was. I read maybe 3 of them, and put the phone face down on the table. The fallout call came the next day from an aunt who launched in without even saying hello. Your mother was mortified. Paige cried through the vows knowing you weren't there. That sounds like a problem, the people who were there. You're being cruel, Connor. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. It was one of the worst days of mine. Funny how that balances out. For a while after that, things actually went quiet. 6 months, almost, of real peace, new friendships in Austin, a promotion to senior director. A life that finally felt like it belonged to me, instead of being something I was managing around other people's expectations. I started to believe I'd actually built distance that would hold. Then, in early summer, Paige found me at a coffee shop 2 blocks from my office. I almost didn't recognize her at first, different haircut, thinner. Then she spotted me and crossed the room with that determined look she's had since we were kids, the one that means she's already decided how this conversation is going to go regardless of what I want. Connor. Oh my God, finally. She sat down across from me without being invited. How did you find me? Mom hired someone's. A skip tracer, I think. She's been trying to find you for months. That's not concern, Paige. That's stalking with a payment plan. She waved that off like it was a minor detail. Listen, things have changed. Sienna and we're not doing great. Money's tight, she's been distant, we fight about everything. I think she's realizing what she actually gave up. What I'm hearing is you wanted me to know you're miserable. Got it. That's not, Connor. I know what I did was unforgivable. I think about it constantly. I want to actually apologize properly, not just say the words. I took a sip of my coffee and let her sit in the silence, the way I'd learned to over the last year. And let me guess. If I forgive you, everyone gets to relax. Mom stops crying. Dad stops sighing. The family photos make sense again. Her eyes welled up right on schedule. Is it so wrong that I want my brother back? You didn't lose a brother, Paige. You traded one for a fiancé. That was the deal you made. I'm not interested in renegotiating it, because the terms turned out worse than you expected. I left a half-finished coffee on the table and walked out while she was still talking. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just the particular calm of a decision that's already been made, and doesn't need revisiting. 2 weeks after that, my office manager called me up front, looking uncomfortable. Connor, your father's in the lobby. Says it's urgent family business. Walter had flown to Austin. Flown, not driven, meaning he'd planned this, bought a ticket, decided a workplace ambush was a reasonable strategy. I found him standing by the reception desk, looking older than I remembered, gray pushing further into his hair. We need to talk, he said. We really don't. How did you find my office? Your mother's been looking for months. We just want a conversation, Connor. Your sister's getting married. Was getting married, she's struggling now, and this family is falling apart. The family fell apart. The day Paige decided my fiancé was available. Me leaving Ohio didn't break anything. It just stopped me from watching the wreckage up close. That's not fair. Fair would have been you and Mom standing by what you said in the beginning. You called it unforgivable, Dad. For about 2 weeks. Then you found a way to make it small enough to swallow. His face reddened. She's your sister. She's someone who shares my parents. That's not the same thing as a sister, not anymore. I don't know what happened to you, he said. You used to be reasonable. I used to be a doormat. I learned the difference. I had him escorted out and told my manager that if anyone from my family showed up at the office again, security should call the police. Not me. He didn't ask questions. I think he'd already guessed enough from my face the first time. The real breaking point came in late summer, about 2 months later. I came home from a closing to find my parents' car in my driveway, Mom and Dad on my porch, and Paige standing near the curb, next to a man I didn't recognize. Sienna wasn't with them, which told me something about the state of that relationship, though I didn't care enough to ask. Get off my property, I said, before any of them could open their mouths. Mom stood, doing the face she does, equal parts sorrow and strategy. We drove 14 hours, Connor, please. 10 minutes. You drove 14 hours to a house you found through a private investigator. That's not devotion. That's a restraining order waiting to happen. Paige stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said, and for once her voice actually cracked in a way that sounded real instead of performed. I know I don't deserve you forgiving me. I just need you to hear it. You're sorry you're alone now. That's different from being sorry for what you did. If you were actually sorry, you wouldn't have spent a year asking me to make it easier for you. Mom tried the angle I knew was coming, the one she always saved for last. The Christian thing to do is forgive her, Connor. The Christian thing to do would have been not sleeping with my fiancé in the first place. We're a little past that conversation. Dad's voice rose. Holding on to this is only going to hurt you in the long run. Something in me had been building toward this moment for over a year, and it finally arrived, calm instead of explosive. Here's what I'm letting go of, I said, all of you. Paige destroyed my engagement and you welcomed her back into every family dinner like nothing happened. You two told me to forgive a betrayal because it was inconvenient to hold a grudge for longer than a season. I'm done. I don't have a sister. I don't really have parents anymore, not in any way that matters. I have people I used to be related to. Mom started crying, the real kind this time, not the strategic kind. We're your family. You're the people who chose her comfort over my reality, every single time it mattered. That's not family. That's a side, and you picked it a long time ago. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Told them clearly, on camera, that if any of them contacted me again, by phone, by mail, by showing up anywhere I lived or worked, I would file a restraining order, and that this time I meant it permanently, not as a threat I'd walk back in a few months. They left eventually, slow, looking back like I might change my mind on the drive away. I didn't. That was 8 months ago. I filed the paperwork the following week, just to make sure everyone understood. I wasn't bluffing. I haven't spoken to my parents, my sister or the woman I almost married since. My phone is sort quiet in a way it never used to be, and for the first time in over a year, that quiet feels like something I chose instead of something that was done to me.